Muslim society is under attack. It isn't just active attacks of Islamic terrorists that threaten us, but it is also slower, passive attacks of mass migration from countries that do not share our value systems and whose people refuse to assimilate. However, that's still not the end of the attacks. It's also under rapid social attacks from intersectional feminism and identity politics. In this video, I will provide an overview of the threats facing Western civilization. Future videos will discuss each of these items in more detail. The active attacks from Islamic terrorists are the easiest and most obvious to see. Sadly, it seems as there are many people who put their fingers in their ears and go, la 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 la, I can't hear you, when you try to discuss the problem with them while covering their eyes, pretending not to see it. These people are almost as big of a threat to our safety as the terrorists themselves. Their refusal to even acknowledge the problem makes it that much easier for terrorists to kill people. They choose to ignore the fact that terrorism in countries that have accepted migrants has been increasing since the influx of people from the Middle East, or even the simple fact that Islamic terrorism has been on the rise for over a decade now. Islam itself teaches that any who do not follow Islam must be killed if they refuse to convert. While many religions teach that their faith is the one true religion, that all should be converted to it, and have in the past used violence to obtain this goal, the use of violence is no longer used on a large scale. However, the use of violence still remains prominent in Islam. If the threat of terrorism isn't bad enough, many of the migrants coming from the Middle East refuse to assimilate to the culture and values of their new home. One of the biggest problems with this is that many of the values of Middle Eastern culture conflict with Western values. For example, the way women and homosexuals are treated in Islamic nations. What they cannot accomplish through violence, they will attempt to accomplish through the passive means of mass migration. The external threats are only half of the problem, though. We are also facing threats from within our own culture. The threats come from such forces as intersectional feminism with their attacks on families, traditional gender roles, masculinity, femininity, and many other things. Feminism has begun to attack the nuclear family, which has been one of the cornerstones of society for millennia. It has provided a strong foundation for the growth of billions of people, but feminists want to destroy it. They now preach that it should be rejected and categorize it as evil. They push women to be single mothers or that children should be raised by homosexual or trans couples. While there is nothing wrong with these types of families, they should not be taught as a replacement for the nuclear family. We can see how well the single mother family works by looking at the Black American community, a community which has over 50% of children coming from a single mother home, the lowest levels of educational attainment, and the highest crime rates across the board. However, when you look at Asian Americans, you see the exact opposite. You see a community with over 90% of children coming from two-parent households, having the highest levels of educational attainment and the lowest crime rates across the board. By attacking the nuclear family, feminism weakens our society's foundation. The attacks continue when they demonize the traditional gender roles. While these roles are not for everyone and should not be forced on people, they play an important role in society and are embraced by millions of people throughout the Western world. While neither gender is better than the other, both genders are indeed different. The genders are complementary to each other, with both of them playing an important role in the development of human beings and society as a whole. Similar things can be said for their attacks on femininity and masculinity, but that is a separate video on the plague of feminism. Finally, the last attack Western civilization is facing comes from identity politics. Identity politics, which is tied directly to the plague of feminism, divides our society into small buckets of people who compete with each other in the oppression Olympics. The oppression Olympics pit these groups against each other to claim the title of most oppressed. The oppression Olympics teach that minorities are oppressed by white people, women are oppressed by men, trans people are oppressed by cis people, homosexuals are oppressed by straight people, and on and on and on. This further weakens our society and distracts us from outside threats. It leaves us fighting against one another. It teaches that Western society is inherently evil and the cause of all the world's hardships, and that only through its total destruction can these problems be solved. It preaches that if we get rid of things like gender norms, heteronormativity, the very thing that makes up over 90% of the population and is how we continue to survive as a species, cisgenderism, and every other pillar of society, that the world will be all rosy, and that we will sit around holding hands, singing kumbaya, and that an era of perfect peace will suddenly reign, that hunger and poverty will vanish, and we will have paradise. The reality is that if Western civilization, which has been the source of most of the world's advancements, were to collapse, it would have a significant negative impact on the world. Look at the harm the global recession caused. If you don't like that example, how about the harm the fall of the Soviet Union caused to its member states? Still not good enough? You can always look to the granddaddy of them all, the fall of the Roman Empire, which led to the Dark Ages lasting a millennium. a period ruled by feudalism, making it almost impossible for the poor to improve the quality of their lives, a period plagued by the breakdown of culture, trade, infrastructure, and any form of advancement. During the Dark Ages, religion held power over the world, a power it did not relinquish easily. The collapse of Western civilization would make way for religion to regain control. Given the nature of Islam, it would attempt to seize control of nations and impose Sharia law around the world, which in turn would cost many people their lives and rights. I don't know about you, but this will not work for me.